a dog that won't move, a woman barely breathing in the snow, a newborn with blue lips, and a man who just wanted to drive home. Cole Barrett pulled over because any decent person would. He had no idea that stopping would put a target on his back before sunrise, because somewhere out in that storm, past the tree line, past the dead radio signal, past everything that made Ironwood Ridge feel safe, a man with resources, weapons, and zero conscience was already being told exactly where his wife had been found. If you've never seen a quiet man become the most dangerous person in the room, stay with me. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the stories I tell don't stop at one part. Drop your city and country in the comments right now. I want to see how far this story has traveled. Like this video, share it, and let's find out together. The highway didn't have a name on most maps. State Route 12B, if you were being technical about it, which nobody in Ironwood Ridge ever was. Locals called it the Ridge Line, and in July it was perfectly passable. 2 lanes of cracked asphalt cutting through pine forest, the kind of road that smelled like sap and cold creek water when you rolled the window down. In January, at 11:47 p.m., during what the National Weather Service would later classify as a Category 2 winter storm event, it was something else entirely. Cole Barrett had his wipers on high, and they still weren't keeping up. He was doing 32 miles per hour, less than half the posted limit, because at 33 he'd felt the rear end of his F-250 drift 2 inches to the left, and that was enough of a warning. He'd learned a long time ago to listen to the first warning. You don't always get a second one. The truck's heater was running full blast. The radio had given up around mile marker 7, dissolving into static somewhere between a weather advisory and what might have been a country song. He didn't mind the quiet. He'd had enough noise in the years before Ironwood Ridge to last him a while. He was thinking about Emma. His daughter was 7 years old, staying at his neighbor Ruth's place tonight, because Cole had driven down to Boise for a contractor licensing appointment. The kind of bureaucratic errand you couldn't reschedule, couldn't do remotely, had to show up for in person with 3 forms of ID and a patience he'd had to manufacture from scratch. He'd planned to be home by 9. The storm had other ideas. Emma would be asleep by now. Ruth would have given her the good hot chocolate, the kind with the mini marshmallows Emma considered non-negotiable, and she'd be curled up on Ruth's pull-out couch under the quilt with the ducks on it, completely unbothered. That thought, just that one image, was the thing that kept Cole's hands steady on the wheel. He almost didn't see the dog. The shepherd was standing dead center in the right lane, maybe 60 feet ahead. Cole's high beams hit him, and the animal didn't flinch, didn't bolt, just stood there with his head low and his legs planted like he was made of concrete. His coat was soaked through and matted with ice. His breath came out in short, visible puffs that the wind immediately tore apart. Cole hit the brakes, slow, controlled, no panic, and brought the truck to a stop about 15 feet from the animal. For a moment, neither of them moved. The dog stared into the headlights. His eyes caught the light and threw it back amber. Cole rolled down his window and a wall of frozen air hit him in the face. "Hey." His voice came out low, even. "You lost, bud?" The shepherd didn't move toward him, didn't move away, just turned his head slightly to the left. A deliberate gesture, almost like a point, and then looked back at Cole. Cole had worked with military working dogs during 2 overseas deployments. He knew the difference between a panicked animal and a dog that was trying to communicate something. He'd seen handlers miss that distinction with consequences that still bothered him when the weather changed. He put the truck in park. The cold hit him fully when he stepped out, cutting through his jacket in about 4 seconds flat. The wind was coming from the northwest at what felt like 30, maybe 35 miles per hour, driving the snow nearly horizontal. Visibility past the tree line was 0. He could feel the temperature against his teeth when he breathed. He walked around the front of the truck, keeping his movement slow. The shepherd watched him come without retreating. Up close, Cole could see the animal was exhausted in the specific way that goes past tired and starts becoming something else. His haunches were trembling. There was a thin line of blood on his left rear leg, dried and crusted with snow. "Okay," Cole said quietly. "What have you got?" The dog turned and walked off the shoulder of the road into the darkness. Cole followed. 10 feet off the asphalt, down a shallow embankment where the snow had drifted against a fallen pine, he found her. She was lying on her side in about 8 inches of snow, her back against the fallen tree. She was wearing a coat that might have been adequate for October, a wool hat that had partially come off, and she had both arms wrapped around something against her chest, wrapped around it with the specific tightness of someone who has decided not to let go no matter what else happens. The baby was so small, Cole almost didn't register him as a separate person at first. He was bundled in the woman's coat flap, tucked against her chest, and he wasn't crying. That last part was what moved Cole's legs before his brain finished processing the scene. He dropped to his knees in the snow beside her. Hey, look at me. She stirred. Her eyelids moved, heavy and slow, the way people move when hypothermia starts making the body's priorities very simple. Her voice was barely audible under the wind. Noah. He's right here. I see him. I'm not going to touch him yet. I'm going to get you both up first, okay? Can you hear me? Her eyes opened, dark brown, unfocused, working to find his face. There you go, Cole said. Stay with me. What's your name? Mara. Mara, I'm Cole. I've got a warm truck right there, 20 feet away. Can you feel your hands? A pause. Some. Not good, but not the worst answer. He got his arm under her shoulders and helped her sit up slowly. She gasped with the effort, a real sound, pain-sharp, which told him she was more conscious than she'd seemed. The baby made a small noise against her chest, thin and high, but there. He's okay, Cole said, and he wasn't entirely sure that was true, but he needed her moving and terror wasn't going to help that. Let's get you both in the truck. Getting her up the embankment with the baby between them was clumsy and slow. She slipped twice. Cole caught her both times without thinking about it. The weight distribution automatic, muscle memory from carrying wounded men out of places that didn't appear on civilian maps. He didn't mention that. The shepherd followed them every step. When Cole got the passenger door open and got Mara and the baby settled against the seat, both of them finally out of the wind, he turned the heat to maximum and pulled the emergency blanket from behind his seat. The truck carried a basic trauma kit too, an old habit he'd never broken. 2 tourniquets, a compression bandage, a mylar sheet, glucose tabs, and a small pen light. He did a quick assessment, fast, practiced, not clinical enough to scare her. Her color was poor but not absent. The baby's lips had a trace of blue that made his stomach tighten, but the child was breathing and making sound, which was the critical column. Cole picked up his phone. 1 bar. He dialed without hesitating. Wade. When the call connected, he didn't wait for a greeting. It's Cole. I'm on the ridgeline, somewhere around mile marker 11. I've got a woman and an infant, both hypothermic, both alive. The baby's borderline. What's the fastest route to get Dr. Harlan to meet me somewhere? A pause on the other end. Sheriff Wade Mercer's voice came back alert, the sleep completely gone from it. Clinic on Birch is closer than the hospital. I'll call Harlan now. How bad is the woman? Moderate to serious. She was down in the snow. I don't know how long. The road passable? For a truck, barely. I'm already moving. He ended the call before Mercer could ask more questions. He put the truck in drive and eased back onto the road. In the passenger seat, Mara had the baby pressed against her neck. Her eyes were open and tracking, which was a good sign. The emergency blanket crinkled every time she breathed. Cole glanced at her. You doing okay? I don't know. Her voice was clearer now. Warmer air was helping. I don't know what okay is right now. Fair enough. Just keep talking to him. Your voice is the best thing for him at this point. She looked down at the baby, started murmuring something low that Cole couldn't make out. He focused on the road. In the back seat, the shepherd had climbed up and pressed himself against the rear of the center console, as close to the baby as the geometry allowed. He hadn't made a sound since they'd gotten in the truck. He'd just positioned himself there and stayed. Cole had seen loyalty in people that looked like less than that. Dr. Patricia Harlan was already in her coat when Cole pulled into the clinic parking lot at 12:23 a.m. She had her nurse, a young man named Travis, with her, and they came out to the truck with a gurney and a portable warming kit before Cole had the engine fully off. The handoff was efficient. Harlan asked the right questions in the right order and didn't waste time on the ones she could answer herself by observation. Cole stood in the parking lot and watched them take Mara and Noah inside. The shepherd stood beside him. After a moment, Cole looked down at the dog. The dog looked up at him. You want to come in out of the cold? Cole said. The shepherd walked toward the clinic door. Cole opened it. The waiting room of the Ironwood Ridge Community Clinic was about the size of a living room. 4 chairs, a small table with outdated magazines, and a coffee maker that produced something that called itself coffee. Cole poured a cup and didn't taste it. He sat in the chair nearest the hallway door, and the shepherd settled at his feet. Around 1 a.m., Sheriff Mercer came in. Wade Mercer was 51, broad-shouldered, with a gray mustache and the kind of face that had decided years ago to stop hiding what it was thinking. He was a decent man and a competent sheriff, which in Cole's experience was not as common a combination as it should have been. He'd been in Ironwood Ridge his whole life. He knew everyone and most of their business, which he handled with a tact that Cole had come to genuinely respect. He looked at the dog, then at Cole, then at the coffee cup. "You want real coffee?" Mercer said. "I've got a thermos in the truck." "I'm fine." Mercer sat down. "Harlan says the baby's going to be okay. Woman too, probably. She's hypothermic, but she's responsive." Cole nodded. "You want to tell me how you found them?" "Dog was in the road," Cole said. "I stopped. He showed me where she was." Mercer looked at the shepherd. "He yours?" "No." "Hers?" "I don't know yet." Mercer pulled out his notebook. He still used an actual notebook, spiral-bound, never a phone, and wrote something. "She have any ID on her?" "Nothing I found. She was in no condition to be searched." "Right." He tapped his pen against the notebook. "Anyone see the vehicle she came from? Any skid marks? Anything?" "I didn't look. My priority was getting them warm." "Of course." Mercer stood up and stretched his back, a movement that looked like it cost him something. "I'll run the ridge tomorrow when it's light, see if there's a car somewhere." They sat with that for a moment. "How's Emma?" Mercer asked. "At Ruth's? She's fine." "Ruth know you're here?" "She will in the morning." Mercer nodded. He started to say something else. Then the hallway door opened and Dr. Harlan came out. She looked tired in the specific way that doctors look tired when the outcome went the right direction, but the margin was closer than anyone wanted. "She's asking for you," Harlan said, looking at Cole. Cole set down the coffee cup. "The baby?" "Warming up. He's small and he had a rough night, but he's strong. I want to keep him for observation, but I don't think there's lasting damage." She paused. "She's very insistent. She says your name." Cole stood up. The shepherd stood up with him. Harlan looked at the dog. "He stays where I can see him," Cole said quietly. She considered that for half a second. "Fine. Come on. Bount." Mara Ellison was propped up in the clinic's single examination bed, an IV in her left arm, 2 warming blankets around her shoulders. Noah was in a warming bassinet beside her, connected to a monitor that beeped steadily and reassuringly. She had one hand stretched out and resting against the side of the bassinet. She looked better than she had any right to. When Cole came in, she focused on him immediately. Her eyes were sharp now, fully conscious, and they were afraid in a way that had nothing to do with hypothermia. "You're the one who found us," she said. "Yes." "How long were we out there?" "I don't know. You were already down when I got to you. Maybe an hour in those temperatures, maybe 2. The dog kept you both warm." She looked at the shepherd, who had positioned himself near the bassinet and was watching the room's window with his ears up. Something moved across her face. Recognition, grief. Something complicated. "Ranger," she said softly. The shepherd's ears rotated toward her. "He's yours?" Cole said. "He was my father's." She stopped, collected herself. "He's been with me for—" Another stop. She shook her head slightly. "It doesn't matter." Cole pulled the chair closer and sat down. "Mara, you were in the snow in the middle of a blizzard with a newborn, miles from anything. Whatever's going on, I need to understand it, because Sheriff Mercer is going to come in that door in about 10 minutes and ask you questions. And I'd rather know what you're dealing with before that happens." She looked at him for a long moment. The beeping of Noah's monitor filled the space between them. "Why?" she said. "You don't know me." "No," Cole said. "But I carried your son up a frozen embankment, so we're a little past strangers." Something changed in her expression, not quite a smile. Something more like someone making a decision. "My husband will know I'm here," she said quietly. "By morning. He'll know exactly where I am." "Why?" "Because he always does." She looked at the window. "He has people. He has infrastructure, resources I didn't fully understand until it was too late to be surprised by them." She paused. "I need you to understand something. When I say he'll come for us, I don't mean he's an angry man who wants his family back." Her voice didn't shake. It was very flat and very clear. "I mean, he will send people, and the people he sends will not be gentle about it." The monitoring equipment beeped. Ranger's head turned toward the window. In the parking lot outside, barely audible through the clinic walls and the wind, an engine had started. Cole heard it. He didn't look at the window. He kept his eyes on Mara's face, and his voice stayed level. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start from the beginning." She opened her mouth to speak, and outside the engine didn't drive away. It sat there, idling in the dark, in the middle of a blizzard, going nowhere, waiting. Cole didn't move toward the window. That was the first thing. He kept his posture loose, his hands visible on his knees, his eyes on Mara's face. Because if whoever was sitting in that parking lot was watching the building, the last thing he wanted to do was telegraph that anyone inside had noticed them. Old habit. Old, ugly, useful habit. "Keep talking," he said to Mara. His voice was quiet enough that it didn't carry past the room. "Tell me about your husband." She watched him with those sharp brown eyes, and he could see her processing the fact that he hadn't looked at the window, that he'd heard the engine and chosen not to react to it visibly. Most people, when they heard something that scared them, looked toward it. It was animal instinct, hard to suppress. Cole hadn't looked. She noticed. "Victor Crane," she said. The name came out flat, like she'd practiced removing the emotion from it. "He runs a logistics company out of Portland, Crane Global Freight. On paper, it's legitimate. Warehousing, cross-state trucking contracts, some international shipping coordination." She paused. "That's the paper version. And the real version?" "The real version is what I found 8 months ago when Noah was 3 weeks old and I couldn't sleep, and Victor was in Seattle for what he called a supply chain conference." She pulled the warming blanket tighter around her shoulders. "He has a home office. I knew that. I'd been in it 100 times. But there's a secondary drawer in his desk, the kind with a false bottom, which sounds like something out of a movie, I know. And I know how it sounds. And I found it because I was looking for a pen and the bottom of the drawer felt wrong under my hand." Cole said nothing. Let her go. Burner phones. 3 of them, all different carriers. A small encrypted hard drive. And a folder. Actual physical paper in a manila folder, with transfer records. Financial transfers. Amounts. I couldn't make sense of it first, but there were reference numbers on them. And I'm a forensic accountant, Cole. That's what I do. Did. That's what I am. She stopped. "I know what money laundering looks like. I've testified about it in federal court. And what I was looking at in that folder was not supply chain payments." Outside, the engine was still running. Ranger had shifted position. He was no longer near the bassinet. He'd moved, without any visible prompt, to a spot between the examination bed and the window. Not blocking it, not making himself obvious, just repositioning. Cole had seen military working dogs do exactly that. Autonomous threat assessment. The good ones didn't need to be told. "The phones," Cole said. "Were they active?" One of them had a call log. Partial. Most of it was cleared, but there were 6 numbers that had been called in the previous 2 weeks, and I wrote them down on my hand in the bathroom before I put everything back exactly the way I found it. Her jaw tightened. I am very good at putting things back exactly the way I found them. I had to be. "He didn't know you'd seen it." "Not that night. Not for another 3 weeks. She looked at Noah in the bassinet. The baby's small chest rose and fell with the steady rhythm of new sleep. "I spent those 3 weeks doing what I know how to do. I researched the reference numbers. I traced the transfer routing through 2 shell companies in Delaware and 1 in the Caymans. I identified 4 of the 6 phone numbers. 2 of them connected to men with federal records. 1 connected to a transport company in Nevada that had been under DEA watch for 18 months. She exhaled slowly. And the 4th number connected to a network that federal agencies have been trying to build a case on for years. An interstate operation, moving people, children, specifically. The word landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Cole held very still. "I copied everything I could," Mara continued. "Photographed the documents with my phone. Got into the encrypted drive. Victor thought his password was clever, but he used a variation of our wedding date, and I'd watched him type it once. I copied everything onto a separate drive and hid it." She looked at her hands. "And then I made the mistake of calling my sister. Victor monitored your calls. Victor monitored everything. She said it without heat, which somehow made it worse. I think he'd been doing it for a long time, and I wasn't looking for it. You don't look for things like that when you trust someone. A pause. Or when you think you do. Cole heard footsteps in the hallway. He recognized the weight of them. Mercer's walk, unhurried and heavy. He glanced at the door, then back at Mara. How long ago did you leave? 11 days ago. I took Noah and Ranger and I drove north. I had cash. I'd been pulling $200 a week from ATMs for 6 weeks. Never from the same machine, never on the same day. I had a bag packed. I had the drive. She stopped. I had a plan. What happened to the plan? The car happened. For the first time, something close to bitter humor crossed her face. Transmission died outside a town called Garnet Falls 3 days ago. I got it to a mechanic who said it would take a week and cost more than I had in cash. I paid what I had, got the car back in questionable condition, and drove it until it stopped moving, which was apparently mile marker 9 on your highway. She shook her head. I was going to walk to the nearest light I could see through the trees. I figured it was maybe half a mile. It was 4 miles, Cole said. She absorbed that. You would have died, he said. Not cruelly, just as information. I know that, she said quietly. The door opened and Mercer came in, bringing the smell of cold air and bad coffee with him. He looked at Cole, then at Mara, then at the shepherd's new position near the window. Miss... He looked at his notebook. Ellison? Yes. I'm Sheriff Mercer. I need to ask you a few questions when you're up to it. He looked at Cole with a specific expression that meant he'd notice things and would be asking about them later. In the meantime, we've got a cruiser doing a slow pass of the area, standard procedure for... There's a vehicle in your parking lot, Cole said. Mercer went still. How long? Since before you came in. A pause. You didn't say anything. I'm saying it now. Mercer's hand went to his radio, then stopped. He looked at Cole for a second, and something passed between them. The specific calculation of a man deciding how alarmed to be based on reading another man's face. What he read in Cole's face apparently settled it. He keyed the radio quietly. Davis, do me a favor. Walk past the front lot, north side. Don't stop, don't look directly. Just tell me what you see. Static. Then, copy, Sheriff. They waited. Noah's monitor beeped. Ranger sat with his ears at an angle Cole would have described as listening, not watching, sound priority over sight, which meant the dog was tracking something specific rather than doing general surveillance. The radio crackled. Black SUV, late model, Idaho plates, engine running, tinted windows, can't see occupant count, no markings. Mercer looked at Mara. She had already gone pale. Is that him? Cole asked. It's not him, she said. Victor doesn't come himself. Her voice was very controlled. He sends people. How many people? Last time it was 2. She paused. But last time he didn't know I had the drive. Mercer stepped out of the room to make calls and the clinic got very quiet. Travis, the nurse, came in to check Noah's monitor readings and left again quickly, reading the room correctly. Dr. Harlan appeared briefly in the doorway, looked at Cole, and said nothing, which Cole appreciated. He pulled his chair closer to Mara's bed. The drive, he said. Where is it? It's on me. She touched the left side of her torso below the ribs. Taped. Okay, he thought for a moment. The recordings you mentioned, you said encrypted recordings. Was that on the drive? The drive has copies, but there are also 3 recordings I made myself. She met his eyes. Voice recordings. Of Victor. He called me twice after I'd been gone 4 days. The third one I recorded in person, 6 days before I left. I told him I needed to talk, that I was worried about the business, that I'd seen some things I didn't understand. I let him explain. Her voice didn't change. He explained quite a lot. Cole looked at her for a moment. Forensic accountant. 6 weeks of cash withdrawals. Photographed documents, copied drives, recorded conversations. She had not panicked. She had built a case. That was smart, he said. It was terrifying, she said. And it was smart, both things. He almost said something about that, didn't. There's a federal contact, she continued, A woman, an assistant U.S. attorney in Seattle named Kwan. I have her direct number memorized. I've never called it. I was afraid to use any phone Victor might be able to trace. But I have it. If I can get to a secure line, we'll get there, Cole said. Mercer came back in. His expression had changed in a way Cole recognized. Something confirmed that the sheriff had hoped would turn out to be nothing. SUV is registered to a company called Cascade Meridian Holdings, Mercer said. I ran it. The registration traces to a Portland address, LLC, with no public ownership record. Secretary of State database shows it was filed by a registered agent service, the kind you pay $60 to, and they ask 0 questions. Cole said nothing. You know what that is? Mercer asked Mara. One of Victor's shells, she said. He has a dozen of them, maybe more. Mercer sat down heavily in the other chair. He rubbed his face with both hands, which was the first time Cole had seen him do that. All right, let me think about what I'm working with here. He looked at Cole. You believe her. It wasn't a question, but Cole answered it anyway. Yes. Based on what exactly? You met her an hour ago. Based on the fact that the dog kept her alive in a blizzard and there's a vehicle with a shell company registration sitting in your parking lot in the middle of the night in a snowstorm. Cole's voice stayed even. You can give that as much weight as you want. Mercer looked at him for a long moment. You know, most guys who get a contractor's license in Boise and move to a mountain town to raise their kid, they don't tend to notice things like shell company registration patterns. I read, Cole said. Mercer's mustache moved. Not quite a smile. Right. He stood up and went to the window, carefully, standing to the side of the frame rather than in front of it. Old cop habit. He looked out at an angle. Vehicle's still there, he said. I've got Davis out front and Yolanda covering the back lot. That's my full overnight coverage for this district, which... He stopped. Which is not ideal. How long for backup from the county seat? Cole asked. Storm conditions? 40 minutes, maybe 50. If I call it now. Call it now. Mercer looked at him. Sheriff, Cole said, call it now. Something in the way he said it, not loud, not insistent in a performative way, just a flat certainty that carried its own weight. Mercer picked up his radio. While Mercer worked his radio in the hallway, Cole did a quiet walk of the clinic's ground floor. He wasn't obvious about it. He asked Travis for a cup of water, detoured past the supply room, came back through the short corridor that connected the waiting room to the rear exit. I wasn't running a full reconnaissance. He didn't have enough information for that yet. But he was building a spatial map. Entry points, choke points, sight lines. The clinic was a single-story building, original construction probably 1970s. Addition on the east side that looked like 1990s work. Front entrance, rear exit. 2 windows on the south wall of the main room, 1 window in the exam room where Mara was, a frosted window in the bathroom that was too small to matter. The rear exit opened to a small service lot with a dumpster, and beyond it, a chain-link fence separating the property from an alley. Cole stood at the rear exit for a moment. Through the reinforced glass panel, he could see the service lot, the fence, the alley disappearing into snow and darkness. He noted it, cataloged it, moved on. Back in the exam room, Ranger had returned to his spot near the bassinet. The dog looked at Cole when he came in. Cole looked back. Anything? He said quietly, which was a ridiculous thing to say to a dog, and he knew it, and he said it anyway. Ranger blinked once, slowly, and turned back to the window. Cole pulled out his phone. He had a message from Ruth that, "Kid's fine, storm's wild, call when you can," which he read and didn't answer yet. He had 1 bar of service, fluctuating. He opened his contacts and looked at a name for a moment without calling it. Former team sergeant, guy named Paulson, now doing private security consultation work out of Tacoma. Cole hadn't spoken to him in 14 months. He put the phone back in his pocket. He didn't need Paulson yet. He didn't know what he needed yet, which meant the right move was to gather more and decide less. He sat back down. Tell me about his operation, Cole said to Mara. How it moves. How he communicates with the people he sends. She looked at him with that measuring expression again. You ask very specific questions. You want me to ask vague ones? She almost smiled. Almost. The burner phones are how he communicates with people in the field. They're replaced frequently. I think every 2 to 3 weeks based on what I found. But the coordination doesn't happen over the phones directly. There's a relay system. a communications layer. I didn't fully understand it from what I found, but there were references in the documents to relay points. Physical locations, I think. Somewhere in the region. Cole went still. Like a communications relay, he said, a fixed point that bounces signals. I don't know the technical specifics, but yes, something like that. Victor was very careful about leaving digital traces. He preferred layered systems, he called it once. He was talking about the business, or I thought he was, but now I think he meant something else. She paused. Why does that matter? Because if he's running a relay system in this region, Cole said carefully, and someone in that vehicle out there is using it to coordinate right now, it means there's a fixed point somewhere nearby that we haven't found. And that meant something else too, which he didn't say yet. It meant Victor Crane hadn't just tracked Mara here by luck or by phone monitoring. He'd had infrastructure in this region already, before she'd ever arrived. Cole sat with that for a moment, turning it over. Then Mercer appeared in the doorway. His face was different. Not alarmed. Mercer wasn't a man who alarmed easily, but it was tight in a way it hadn't been 20 minutes ago. Vehicle's gone, he said. Cole looked at him. Pulled out about 3 minutes ago, Mercer continued. No lights until it hit the main road, then drove north. Davis tried to follow, but the conditions... He stopped. Lost it at the Ridgeline Junction. North, Cole said. North. Cole thought about the road north of town. Logging country, abandoned structures, old forestry roads that didn't appear on the current county maps. He'd been up there twice in the past year, once following a property line for a contractor job, once when Emma's school had done a nature walk and he'd volunteered as a parent chaperone. He'd noted things, both times. Again, old habit. The forestry roads, the abandoned structures, a large equipment shed at the end of a fire road about 4 miles out, the kind that had been sealed up when the logging operation folded and mostly forgotten since. He looked at Mercer. Wade, do you have records on abandoned structures north of town? Particularly anything with utility infrastructure, old power lines, antenna mounts, that kind of thing? Mercer's eyes narrowed. There's an old logging operation shed up at the end of Hartwell Road. It was leased out about 3 years back to some equipment storage company. Lease ended and nobody came to pick anything up, so it's just been sitting. I did a welfare check on it last spring. Nothing obviously wrong, but I couldn't get inside, padlock on the door. New padlock or old? Mercer stopped, thought about it. New, he said slowly. I remember thinking it was cleaner than everything else up there. Cole stood up. In the morning, Mercer said immediately. Not tonight, Cole. We can't... I know. Cole sat back down, which seemed to surprise Mercer slightly. In the morning, but you should have county backup here before then. They're on their way. Good. Mercer looked at him for a long moment. There was something behind his eyes, the same thing that had been there when he'd asked about the shell company, a question that Mercer was clearly deciding whether to ask directly. He decided to. Cole? Who are you exactly? The room was quiet. Noah's monitor beeped. Outside, the storm moved against the building in long, slow pulses. Cole looked at Mercer. I'm a contractor who moved to Ironwood Ridge 2 years ago to raise his daughter. That's true, Mercer said, but it's not an answer. A beat. No, Cole said. It's not. Mercer waited, but Cole didn't add anything to it, and after a moment the sheriff nodded once, a man filing something away, and stepped back into the hallway to take another radio call. Mara had been watching this exchange. When Mercer was gone, she looked at Cole with something between curiosity and a careful new kind of attention. You're not going to tell him, she said. There's nothing to tell, Cole said. She looked at him for another moment. Then she reached over and touched the edge of Noah's bassinet, not holding it, just resting her fingers against it. The shed up at Hartwell Road, she said quietly. If that's what I think it is, if that's one of his relay points, then whoever was in that parking lot wasn't just watching us. She paused. They were reporting our position, in real time. Cole had already reached that conclusion approximately 4 minutes ago. Which means, she continued, that Victor already knows exactly which building we're in, which room, and how many people are here. Yes, Cole said, and backup is 40 minutes away in a blizzard. Closer to 30 now. She looked at him. Her hands were very steady. He noticed that. So what do we do? Cole looked at the window, then at the door, then at Ranger, who was watching the window with a focused stillness that was its own kind of answer. "We wait," Cole said, carefully. And somewhere north of town, in the dark, past the tree line where the forestry roads disappeared into snow, something was already moving. The 30 minutes passed like held breath. Cole spent most of it doing things that looked like nothing. He refilled his coffee cup and didn't drink it. He walked the hallway twice, slow, unhurried, the way a man walks when he can't sleep and doesn't want to admit it. He checked in with Travis about Noah's temperature readings and asked a question about the warming protocol that he already knew the answer to, because what he actually wanted was to stand near the supply room long enough to take a full inventory of what was in it. Mercer had Davis and Yolanda repositioned, Davis covering the front entrance from inside now, Yolanda in her cruiser at the rear lot. Backup from the county seat was 20 minutes out, last radio check. The storm had eased slightly, which was the kind of improvement that meant visibility went from near zero to bad, and bad was enough. Cole came back to the exam room at 2:14 a.m. and found Mara awake, her eyes on the ceiling, one hand resting flat on Noah's bassinet. "You should sleep," he said. "You should too," she said, without looking at him. He sat down. The shepherd was on the floor between the bed and the door, his chin on his paws, his eyes open. Mara turned her head toward Cole. "Tell me something true about yourself." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because I've been talking for 2 hours and I don't know anything about you except that you carry a trauma kit in your truck and you don't look at things that scare you." She paused. "That second part is very unusual." Cole considered the ceiling for a moment. "I have a daughter named Emma. She's 7. She likes the duck quilt at Ruth's more than her own bed, and she's been telling me for 3 months that she wants a dog." Mara glanced at Ranger. "Convenient." "That's what I thought." A pause. Something almost comfortable in it, which, given the circumstances, said something about both of them. "Where's her mother?" Mara asked. "Car accident," Cole said. 4 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Yeah." He said it without weight, the way people say things they've made a kind of peace with. Not a full peace, the partial kind that's all you realistically get. Mara was quiet for a moment. "Victor and I were married for 6 years. The first 3 I thought I'd gotten very lucky." She stopped. "Then I started noticing small things, inconsistencies, things that didn't add up in the way that an accountant notices things not adding up, which is a very specific and very relentless kind of noticing." She exhaled. "I kept telling myself there were explanations, that I was paranoid, that I was projecting." Her jaw set. "I was not projecting." Cole said nothing. She didn't need him to. "The worst part," she said, "isn't even what he is. It's that I was good at my job. I was genuinely good at it. And I missed it for 3 years because I didn't want to see it." Her voice didn't break. It just got very flat. "That's what I think about. Not the danger. That." Cole looked at her. "You saw it when you needed to, and you got out. Barely. Barely counts," he said. She looked at him for a moment with an expression he couldn't entirely read. Then her eyes moved to the window. Her body went completely still. Cole was already turning. 3 distinct whistles, cutting through the storm, from somewhere close. High, sharp, patterned. Not random. The kind of signal that meant something to someone specific. Mara's face had gone the color of the wall behind her. "That's his signal," she said. Her voice was barely air. "Victor uses that. 3 whistles means everyone's in position." Cole was on his feet. He went to the door and spoke quietly into the hallway. "Davis." The deputy looked up from his position near the front entrance. "Radio Mercer," Cole said. "Now. Tell him 3 whistles, south side, possible flanking formation. Use those words." Davis stared at him. "Flanking. Just say it." Cole was already moving back into the room. He looked at Mara. "The drive. Can you run?" "Yes." "Noah's bassinet has wheels. Travis showed you how to lock them?" "Yes." "Unlock them. Keep him with you. Keep him low. When I tell you to move, you move without asking me where. You understand?" She was already sitting up, reaching for the bassinet's wheel locks. "Yes." Cole looked at Ranger. The shepherd was standing now, his posture entirely different from 30 seconds ago. Weight forward, head level, the specific muscular readiness that had a name in the K9 units he'd worked alongside. Alert to threat. Not yet aggression. The stage just before it. Cole reached down and put his hand briefly on the dog's head. Not petting, contact, acknowledgement. Then he went to find Mercer. Potem. Mercer was in the hallway, radio in hand, his face doing the controlled thing it did when the situation had officially outpaced the plan. "I've got county 6 minutes out," he said low and fast. "But 6 minutes is enough time for a lot of things to go wrong," Cole said. "How many does he send?" "Mara said 2 last time." "She doesn't know this time." "No." Cole looked at the front entrance through the narrow wired glass window in the door. The parking lot was visible, lit by a single overhead light that the storm was doing its best to neutralize. 2 vehicles were out there, Mercer's cruiser and Cole's truck. Nothing else visible. The whistle came from the south side. That means at minimum someone on the south, which is the exam room side. Someone in front is visible deterrent. Possibly someone on the rear where Yolanda is. Mercer looked at him with the expression he'd been not quite asking since 2 in the morning. "You're describing a perimeter." "Yes." "You're describing it like someone who knows what one looks like." "Wade." Cole met his eyes. "We can do this later." A beat. Mercer let it go, which was the right call. "Yolanda is at the rear," Mercer said. "She's armed and she's solid. Davis is front. I'm the middle. That's what I've got." "I'm not a deputy," Cole said. "I'm not going to pretend to be one. But I can help you manage the interior, and I know the layout better than Davis does because I walked it 20 minutes ago." He paused. "Let me help you with what I can do." Mercer looked at him for 2 full seconds. Then he nodded. "Mara and the baby go to the storm cellar," Cole said. "Where is it?" Mercer pointed at the floor. "Supply room. Hatch under the shelving unit on the east wall. It's a flood shelter, built when the clinic was constructed. Reinforced door, ventilated, no exterior access. Can it lock from the inside?" "Slide bolt, heavy one." "Okay." Cole was already thinking through the sequence. "She goes in now before anything happens. Travis too if he'll go. The dog stays with them." "Ranger won't leave her," Mara's voice came from the exam room doorway. She was standing there with Noah bundled against her chest, the IV line disconnected. She'd pulled it herself, taped the insertion point with the bandage roll from her own bedside. She was still pale, but she was upright and her eyes were clear. "I heard you. The cellar. Let's go." Cole looked at her. She looked back. "I'm not waiting in a room with a window," she said. "Let's go." He moved to the supply room and found the shelving unit. It was heavy, metal, loaded with bandage stock and saline bags. And he moved it in 2 pulls, not clean, loud enough to matter, which he didn't love. The hatch was beneath it, steel-framed, painted gray, with a recessed handle. He pulled it open. The space below was dark, maybe 8 feet square, concrete walls. He could smell the age of it. He found the light switch on the inside wall, a single bare bulb that came on with a click. "How long does that bulb last?" he asked Travis, who had appeared silently in the doorway with his arms crossed over his chest, looking deeply unhappy about the situation. "I don't know," Travis said. "I didn't know that was down there until 6 months ago." "Is there anything on the power circuit that could cut it?" Travis blinked. "The generator. We're on generator right now because the storm took out the main grid around 1 a.m. If the generator goes, the lights go." Cole looked at Mercer. Mercer looked back. "Where's the generator?" Cole asked. "Outside," Travis said. "East side of the building, against the wall. East wall, exterior facing, accessible." Cole processed that without showing it on his face. "Get a flashlight," he said to Travis. "Give it to her before she goes down." Travis went. Came back with 2, a heavy mag light and a smaller clip light. He handed them both to Mara without being asked to give her the second one, which moved him up slightly in Cole's estimation. Mara looked at the hatch, then at Cole. "If something happens to you," she said, "nothing's going to happen to me." "Cole?" "Mara." He met her eyes. "Get in the cellar. Bolt the door. Don't open it for anyone who doesn't say the word November. Say it back to me." "November," she said. "Good. The dog stays with you. Don't argue with me on that." She looked at Ranger. The shepherd was already moving toward the hatch, already looking into the dark below, already deciding. "I wasn't going to argue," she said quietly. She went down with Noah. Ranger followed without hesitation, descending the short ladder 1 careful step at a time. Travis looked at Cole, then at the hatch, and seemed to make a decision about his own risk tolerance because he went down too without being asked. Cole pulled the hatch closed. He heard the slide bolt engage from below, a solid, heavy sound, good construction, and then he moved the shelving unit back over it. Not all the way. Enough that it wasn't obvious, not enough to seal them in. He went back to the hallway. Mercer was at the front door. "Vehicle," Mercer said quietly, not moving his eyes from the window. "Coming in from the main road. No lights until just now." Cole came to stand beside him. A dark SUV. Not the same one from earlier, or maybe the same one. Impossible to tell make and model in the snow and dark, had turned into the clinic parking lot and stopped 20 feet from the entrance. Its headlights were on now, pointed directly at the front doors. The light was blinding at the glass, which was exactly what it was designed to be. Then a second set of headlights appeared from the south side lot. Another vehicle, circling. Mercer's radio crackled. Yolanda's voice, tight but controlled. "Sheriff, I've got a vehicle approaching the rear lot, slowing down." "Hold your position," Mercer said. "Do not engage unless they move on the building." "Copy." Davis had his hand on his weapon but hadn't drawn it. He was 23 years old, Cole knew, and he was doing a good job of managing his own adrenaline, which at 23 under these conditions was harder than it looked. "Davis," Cole said quietly, "step back from the door, get to the side wall. If anyone comes through that door, you don't want to be the first thing they see." Davis looked at Mercer. Mercer nodded. Davis moved. The front door opened. Not kicked. Not forced. It just opened, because it wasn't locked. It was a medical clinic in a mountain town that left its front door on an electronic latch, and whoever had done the reconnaissance had either known that or found it out in the last 4 hours. 2 men came in. They were large, dressed in cold weather gear with no identifying marks, and they moved through the entrance with the specific non-urgency of people who are confident they have already won. The first one had his hand inside his jacket. The second one's hands were visible and empty, which Cole registered as the more dangerous of the 2 configurations, because empty hands were a communication. "We don't need to show you anything yet." Mercer stepped forward into the waiting room. His badge was visible. His hand was not on his weapon, but it was very close to it. "This is private medical property," Mercer said. His voice was sheriff steady. "You gentlemen need to identify yourselves and state your business here." The first man barely glanced at him. His eyes were doing a quick scan of the room, corners, doorways, the hallway. Professional scan. Cole was standing in the doorway to the hallway, and the man's eyes landed on him and moved on immediately, assessing and dismissing in under a second. That was a mistake. The second man spoke. His voice was flat and without regional accent, the kind of voice that had been trained or had trained itself out of distinctiveness. "We're here for Mara Ellison and her child. We have documentation indicating the child may have been brought here under circumstances of parental dispute. We're not here for trouble." "You came through my door without knocking," Mercer said. "At 2:30 in the morning, in a blizzard." "We knocked," the man said, which was a lie so casual it was almost admirable. "Mara Ellison is a patient in my facility," Dr. Harlan said. Cole hadn't heard her come in. She was standing in the hallway doorway 2 feet from Cole in her white coat, and she looked not frightened, offended. "She is under medical care and she is not going anywhere with anyone without her explicit consent and my medical clearance, both of which, I assure you, she has not given." The first man finally looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Cole measured the distance. 14 feet to the first man, 11 to the second. The second was the problem. Empty hands, weight distributed forward, he'd moved 3 inches to his right since entering, which opened a clear path to the hallway. That was not accidental. "Ma'am," the second man said to Harlan, his voice acquiring a thin layer of patience. "This isn't a medical matter. This is a private family situation, and we're here to resolve it peacefully." "Then you can come back in the morning," Mercer said, "with paperwork, in daylight, and talk to the woman herself." The first man's hand moved inside his jacket. Cole moved. Not dramatically. There was no telegraphing. He simply closed the distance between himself and the first man in 3 steps that were faster than they had any right to be, and he had the man's weapon hand controlled before the man had finished the draw. The gun, a compact semi-automatic, he registered, without looking directly at it, was redirected toward the floor and his wrist was locked in a grip. The man immediately understood was not going to be broken by effort. The second man reacted fast. He went for his own piece. Mercer was faster. His weapon was out and leveled before the second man's hand reached his jacket. Hands. Let me see your hands right now. The second man stopped. The room was very still. The first man tried to shift his weight, tried to use his size advantage to rotate out of the wrist lock. Cole moved with him, not resisting the rotation, using it, redirecting the force in a direction the man's elbow wasn't designed to accommodate. The man made a sound. "Stop," Cole said quietly. Just that. One word, very close to the man's ear. He stopped. Cole looked at Mercer. Mercer had the second man at gunpoint. Davis had come out from the wall and was covering the entrance. Then the radio on Mercer's belt crackled. Yolanda's voice, and this time the tightness in it had graduated into something else. "Sheriff, vehicle in the rear lot just cut its lights. I've got a man on foot moving toward the east wall." The generator. Cole looked at Mercer. "Go," Mercer said. "I've got these two." Cole released the first man, stepped back, and turned to the hallway. Then the lights went out. The generator's death was not a pop or a bang. It was a cough, mechanical and ugly, and then silence, and then darkness that was total and immediate because there were no windows in the supply room hallway, and the storm outside had buried whatever ambient light the parking lot might have offered. Cole was already moving. He hadn't been standing in the light. He'd been in the doorway frame, which put him at the edge of the room rather than the center of it, and his eyes had been tracking toward the hallway when the lights died. That 2-second advantage, the partial dark adaptation, the spatial map he'd built 3 hours ago, it was the difference between moving and standing still. He moved. Down the hallway in near total darkness, his right hand trailing the wall at knuckle height, counting doorways by feel. Supply room. Second door on the left. He found the frame and turned in. He didn't try to move the shelving unit back. No time and too loud. He crouched beside it and put his knuckles on the floor near the hatch and knocked 3 times, then twice. Not November. That was verbal only, but a pattern. From below, after 2 seconds, 3 knocks came back, then 2. She'd thought of it herself. He put his mouth close to the floor. "Stay down, stay quiet, don't open it." He didn't hear a response, but he didn't need one. He stood up and found the wall by touch and moved back to the hallway. From the waiting room, he could hear Mercer's voice giving instructions, controlled and continuous, which was good. It meant the situation there was contained. It meant Davis and Mercer together had the 2 men managed. The front of the building was holding. The rear was the problem. Whoever had cut the generator was on the east wall. Yolanda was in the rear lot. The rear exit was the secondary objective. It was where you'd want someone if your primary team was keeping the front occupied and you needed a clean extraction route. Cole found the rear exit by memory. He put his hand on the push bar without pressure, just contact, and stood next to it in the dark and listened. Wind against the door, the storm working the building. A sound that might have been snow displacement, might have been nothing. Then a shadow moved in the wired glass panel of the door. Someone on the other side, very close. Cole felt his own heartbeat. It was elevated. He noticed that, noted it, let it be. Elevated was normal. Elevated was the body providing resources. The problem wasn't the elevated heartbeat. The problem was whether you let it make decisions for you. He had learned, in places that don't appear on maps and conversations that never happened officially, that the answer to that was no. He took 2 steps back from the door and positioned himself at the angle Yolanda would see when she came around the east corner. If she was coming, if she was still upright, which he didn't know. The door handle moved. Then Yolanda's voice came through the door, sharp and close. "Stop! Don't move! Hands where I can see them." A crash. Someone going down in the snow. A grunt. Cole pushed the door open. Yolanda had a man face down in the service lot's icy gravel, one knee on his back, her weapon leveled at his head. She was breathing hard, but she was solid. The man was large, dressed like the others, and he was not moving. She looked up at Cole. "Generator's dead," she said. "He pulled the fuel line, I heard it." "You're okay?" "I'm fine." She looked at the man under her knee. "He's fine too, unfortunately." Cole looked past her to the alley beyond the chain-link fence. Dark, still. Then 3 lights swung in from the main road, the wash of them cutting across the building's front as they turned into the parking lot, and even around the corner of the building, Cole could see the difference between those lights and the ones that had come before. These were blue and red, cycling. The county backup. The sound of it, the specific sound of multiple vehicles arriving with purpose, went through the building and the lot and changed the temperature of everything. Cole felt it. He imagined the men inside felt it too. He stood in the rear doorway for a moment. His hands were steady. His breathing was 3/4 of the way back to baseline. There was a bruise forming on his right forearm where the first man had tried to break the wrist lock. He hadn't succeeded, but the effort had left a mark. Cole flexed his fingers. Everything worked. From inside the clinic, in the sudden new light of the county units flooding the parking lot, he heard the waiting room louder now. Mercer's voice giving clear commands, other voices responding, professional voices. The cavalry, 12 minutes late, but present. Cole went back inside. He walked past the waiting room without stopping. Both men were on the floor now, zip-tied, Davis standing over them with a county deputy who had come through the front at a run. And he went to the supply room and moved the shelving unit fully aside and knocked on the hatch. "November," he said. The bolt slid. The hatch opened from below. Mara came up first, Noah pressed against her chest, her face drawn and pale and completely without panic. That last part, the absence of panic after what must have been 30 minutes alone in a concrete room in the dark with a newborn, said something about her that Cole filed away quietly. Ranger came up behind her. The shepherd emerged from the hatch and shook himself once, a full-body shudder, and then immediately did what he'd been doing all night. He positioned himself between Mara and the hallway. Weight forward, watching. Travis came up last, blinking in the darkness, and then the emergency lights kicked on, backup battery, pale and yellow, and everyone could see each other. Mara looked at Cole. She looked at his forearm. "You're hurt," she said. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding a little." He looked down. There was a small abrasion where the grab had gone wrong. He hadn't noticed. "I'm fine," he said again. She held his gaze for a moment with an expression he couldn't quite name. Not gratitude exactly, or not only that. Something else in it, something that recognized something. Then Noah made a sound. Not crying, just a sound. The specific small vocalization of a baby registering a change in environment, a change in the arms holding him. And Mara looked down at her son, and the moment passed. Mercer appeared in the doorway. He looked at Cole, at the hatch, at the shelving unit, at the abrasion on Cole's forearm. He looked at all of it in the specific sequential way of a man assembling information into a shape. 3 individuals in custody, Mercer said. 2 front, 1 rear, all armed. We're running ID now. He paused. County's securing the perimeter. Nobody else in the lot. Another pause. That we can see. Cole looked at him. The shed on Hartwell Road. Mercer held his gaze. Already called it in. I've got a unit heading up there now. Good. A beat. Cole, Mercer said. His voice was different now, quieter, without the sheriff on duty register that he'd been using for the past 2 hours. Just his own voice. What I saw in that waiting room, the way you moved. Wade, I'm not asking you to explain yourself. I'm not asking right now. He stopped. I'm just saying I saw it. Cole said nothing. Mercer nodded once, the way he had before, something filed away. From the front of the clinic, through the walls, Cole could hear the radio traffic from the county units, fragmented, overlapping, the specific texture of a scene being secured, people doing their jobs. It had the sound of a situation tipping from chaos toward order. It almost sounded like enough. Almost. Because the 3 men in custody were logistics. They were the visible layer. And Cole had spent years dealing with organizations that used visible layers precisely because visible things could be captured, detained, and later denied. Victor Crane was not in this building. Victor Crane was not in this parking lot. And the signal from the relay on Hartwell Road had been running for hours, which meant someone above the logistics layer already knew what had happened here tonight and was already adjusting. Cole looked at Mara. She was standing with Noah against her chest and her back to the wall, and she was reading his face with the quiet precision of a woman who had spent 6 years learning to read what wasn't being said. She'd already figured it out. He's not done, she said. Not a question. No, Cole said. He's not done. Outside, the blue and red lights kept cycling through the clinic windows, painting everything in alternating cold color, and somewhere past the tree line, past the radio silence and the snow-buried forestry roads and the padlocked shed on Hartwell Road, a man who had never once been the person standing in the cold was already making new plans. The blue and red lights were still cycling when the first federal vehicle pulled into the lot at 4:47 a.m. Cole saw it from the waiting room window. A black Suburban with government plates, moving too deliberately to be local, parking too precisely to be county. Two people got out. One was a man in his 50s in a heavy coat, moving with the careful economy of someone who'd been woken at 3 in the morning and had decided not to waste energy being annoyed about it. The other was a woman, younger, dark hair pulled back, a laptop bag over one shoulder, and a federal credentials wallet already in her hand before she'd fully cleared the vehicle door. Cole had seen that particular combination before. Senior investigator and case analyst. The analyst was the one you actually needed to worry about. Mercer went out to meet them. Cole watched through the glass and didn't go anywhere. The conversation in the parking lot lasted 4 minutes. Mercer's body language through most of it was the specific posture of a man receiving information he'd suspected but hadn't confirmed. Shoulders settling, chin dropping slightly, the almost imperceptible recalibration of someone whose threat assessment just got revised upward. At one point, he turned and looked through the clinic window directly at Cole. Cole held the coffee cup and didn't look away. Mercer came back inside with both of them. "Cole Barrett," Mercer said, and there was something careful in the way he said it now. "This is Special Agent Douglas Reith and Analyst Priya Sandhu, FBI Field Office, Portland. They've been running a parallel investigation." Reith looked at Cole with the measured attention of a man who had spent decades separating what people said from what they were. He was not unfriendly. He was also not warm. He was the temperature of a man doing his job. "Mr. Barrett," Reith said. He didn't offer a hand. "You want to walk me through tonight?" "I found a woman and a baby in the snow," Cole said. "I brought them here. Then some people came to collect them, and I helped prevent that." Reith looked at him for a moment. "That's a very efficient summary." "I try." Sandhu had her laptop open on the waiting room's magazine table and was typing without appearing to pay attention to the conversation, which meant she was paying close attention to the conversation. "The 3 individuals in custody," Reith said. "You physically restrained one of them." His hand was on a weapon. "In a room with a sheriff present and armed." "His hand was moving faster than the sheriff's," Cole said. "I was closer." Reith absorbed this. "You have training." "I've taken some courses." A pause. Reith's expression didn't change, which was itself an expression. "Mr. Barrett, we ran your name about 20 minutes ago, which I imagine you expected we'd do." Cole said nothing. "Your file has some unusual characteristics," Reith continued. "Specifically, certain portions of it that are classified above my clearance level, which is not a low clearance level." He paused. "You want to help me understand that?" "Not particularly," Cole said. The room was quiet for a moment. Travis had retreated to the back. Dr. Harlan had gone to check on Mara. Davis was outside with the county deputies. It was just the 3 of them in the waiting room under the pale emergency lighting and the coffee maker and the old magazines and the specific unpleasant silence of a conversation where one person knows more than they're saying and everyone present understands that. "Navy," Reith said. "That much isn't classified." Cole looked at him. "We're not here to dig into your background," Reith said. "What happened tonight? The restraint you used, the positioning, the cellar decision. That was good work. I'm not here to complicate your life." He pulled a chair out and sat down, which changed the geometry of the conversation in a way that was deliberate. "I need to know what Mara Ellison told you, specifically about the relay point and the network structure." "She told me about Victor Crane," Cole said. "His operation, the financial structure, the recording she has." He paused. "You already know most of it." "We know the shape of it. She fills in specifics we've been missing." Reith glanced toward the hallway. "We've been building this case for 19 months. Crane's organization is sophisticated enough that we've had 4 potential witnesses decline to cooperate and 1 who agreed and then stopped communicating." He said that last part without inflection. "Mara Ellison is the best evidence package we have ever had access to." "She knows that," Cole said. "She built it deliberately." Something shifted in Reith's expression. "We're aware. The recordings alone, if they're what she says they are, Cole said. "She's a forensic accountant. She didn't panic and run. She documented for 6 weeks before she moved. The recordings are real and they're specific, and they include Crane explaining his own coordination structure to her on the assumption that she wasn't going to be able to do anything about it. He paused. He underestimated her. Reith looked at him steadily. It appears, he said, that underestimating people has been a recurring problem tonight. Sandhu stopped typing for exactly 2 seconds and then resumed. Cole picked up his coffee cup and found it was empty. Mara was awake when Reith came in to speak with her. Cole was not in the room for that conversation. Reith had asked for privacy and Cole had given it, not because he was obligated to, but because Mara was competent and she didn't need a handler. She'd been handling herself for months before anyone showed up. He waited in the hallway. Ranger was with him. The shepherd had been reluctant to let Mara out of contact range, but had followed Cole into the hallway when Cole crouched down and said, quietly and without drama, "She's okay. Stay with me a minute." The dog had looked at the closed exam room door, then at Cole, and then sat down beside him. Cole leaned against the wall. His forearm had been cleaned and wrapped by Travis. Just a scrape, nothing structural. But it had stiffened in the past hour, and the throb of it was a steady background note he was managing by not thinking about it. He was tired in the deep way that goes past the need for sleep and becomes something philosophical. The kind of tired that shows up after extended vigilance releases. He thought about Emma. She would be waking up at Ruth's in about 2 hours. She'd want the duck quilt around her shoulders while she ate breakfast, and she'd want the TV on in the background even if she wasn't watching it, because she'd decided at some point that silence during breakfast was uncomfortable, and Cole had stopped arguing with it. She'd ask Ruth where he was, and Ruth would say he got held up, and Emma would say okay, and eat her cereal and be completely unbothered. That was the thing about Emma. She was unbothered by the wrong things and completely derailed by the right ones. A scraped knee was a catastrophe. A missing father was an inconvenience she'd manage. He didn't know where she'd gotten that from. Her mother had been the opposite. He wasn't sure about himself. He needed to call her. He didn't have the signal for it right now. The exam room door opened and Reith came out. He looked at Cole in the hallway and then at the shepherd and then back at Cole. "She's remarkable," Reith said. "Yes," Cole said. "She wants you in there." He paused. "I want you in there too, actually. There are things she'll say directly to you that she's—" He stopped, tried again. "She trusts you. I don't entirely understand why given the time frame, but she does. And I need her comfortable for what comes next." "What comes next?" Cole said. "Protective custody. Federal, starting immediately. We move her and the child out of here before daylight, before Crane can reposition." Reith's voice was flat and factual. "The 3 individuals in custody are already lawyering up, which means our window to use their location data is narrow. We have a unit heading to the Hartwell Road structure now with a federal warrant." "Who's going with them?" Cole asked. "My people from Portland." Reith looked at him. "Why?" "Because if the relay's still active, whoever's monitoring it knows the warrant's coming." Cole said it without emphasis. "Depending on what's in that shed, there may be a secondary relay that doesn't appear in anything you've seen yet." Reith was quiet for a moment. "What makes you think that?" "Because Crane has been running this operation for years without getting touched," Cole said. "Men who run things for years without getting touched don't rely on a single communications layer in a region they consider high value. They build redundancy." Reith looked at him with the specific expression of a man recalibrating. "Your file," he said. "The classified portions." Cole looked back at him. "I'm a contractor who does renovation work in Ironwood Ridge." "Right." Reith said it without sarcasm. "Come talk to the woman, Mr. Barrett." Mara had shifted in the bed, sitting properly now, both feet on the floor, the warming blankets around her shoulders like a cape she was refusing to be diminished by. Noah was in the bassinet beside her. Sandhu was in the corner with her laptop, and the analyst had the look of someone who had already absorbed a very large amount of information and was organizing it with quiet speed. Cole came in and stood near the door. Mara looked at him. "They want to move us." "I know. Tonight. Before daylight," he said. "That's right." She looked at the bassinet. "Noah's stable, but Harlan wants to keep him under observation for another 12 hours at minimum." "I told them that," Reith said from the doorway. "We're arranging a secure medical facility. Portland, federal adjacent. Dr. Harlan can brief the receiving physician by phone." Mara didn't look at Reith. She kept looking at Cole. What do you think? Cole took a breath. He did the thing he always did, the thing that had kept him and other people alive in situations that didn't have good options. He stripped the question down to its actual components. What were the real variables? What were the margins? I think you're safer mobile than stationary, he said. The 3 men in custody reduce the immediate threat, but they don't eliminate it. Crane knows where you are. He's had hours to adjust. Moving before daylight takes away his ability to reposition visually. But Noah is stable, Cole said. Harlan said stable, not critical. In a federal vehicle with medical equipment and a direct line to a physician, he's not meaningfully less safe than he is in this room. He paused. You asked what I think. That's what I think. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she nodded once. Okay, she said. Reith made a call in the hallway. Sandhu kept typing. Cole sat down in the chair and Mara looked at him with the expression she'd had earlier, the one that was recognizing something. You should get home to your daughter, she said. She's fine. Ruth's got her. Cole. Mara. She almost smiled, same almost as before. You should tell me something true again, she said, while there's still time. He thought about it for a moment. I've been trying to leave certain things behind me for 2 years, he said. The way I moved in that waiting room. I don't love that it's still there, still that available. He looked at his wrapped forearm. Sometimes I think it's like a language you learn when you're young. You can stop speaking it, but you don't forget it. She was quiet for a moment. Did it help tonight? Yes, he said. Then maybe... She stopped, started again. Maybe some things aren't better left behind. Maybe they're just waiting for the right reason. He didn't answer that, but he didn't disagree with it either. The county unit that drove up Hartwell Road at 5:20 a.m. reported back 17 minutes later. Cole was in the waiting room when the call came through on Reith's phone, and Reith's face during the call told him the story before the agent spoke. The sequence was careful listening, 1 sharp intake of breath through the nose, 3 seconds of very still expression, then the controlled exhale of a man taking a piece of information and locking it somewhere useful. Reith hung up. The shed, he said. What did they find? Mercer asked. Relay equipment, commercial grade but modified. Encrypted signal repeater, 3 active lines, one of which was transmitting when they breached. Reith paused. And paper records. Physical paper. Ledgers. Names, dates, routes, transaction codes. He looked at Cole. You were right about the redundancy. There's a notation in the ledgers referencing a secondary relay point 30 miles west. They're running it down now. Mercer let out a slow breath. How long has that shed been running? Cole asked. Based on the equipment serial numbers, possibly 14 months. Reith's jaw was tight. 14 months. In a shed 4 miles outside a mountain town that nobody was looking at. Cole thought about all the things that had moved through that relay in 14 months. All the coordinated movements, the confirmed locations, the logistics of an operation that traded in human lives. He let himself sit with that thought for exactly as long as it took to become useful anger rather than useless horror, and then he filed it. Victor Crane, Cole said. Where is he right now? Reith looked at him. We don't know. You've had him under investigation for 19 months. We know his Portland address. We have eyes on it. He's not there. Reith's voice was controlled, but the control was doing work. He left 4 days ago. We had a gap in surveillance. Resource issue. I won't get into it. And when we picked it back up, he was gone. A silence in the room. He knew, Cole said. He knew you were building the case. Possibly. Not possibly, Mara said from the doorway. Everyone turned. She was standing there with Noah against her chest, Ranger at her heel, her IV arm wrapped where Travis had bandaged the removal point. She looked at Reith. Victor has had a contact inside law enforcement for at least 2 years, she said. I didn't include this in what I told you earlier because I wasn't sure I could prove it, but there are 3 references in the financial records I copied. Indirect references, disguised as equipment maintenance payments, to a routing account that I traced to a shell in Nevada. She paused. The shell's registered agent is the same registered agent used by the Portland Police Union's legal fund. The room was very quiet. Sandhu had stopped typing. Reith looked at Mara. You're saying Crane has a source inside Portland PD? I'm saying the money goes somewhere it shouldn't, Mara said. What that means is your job to determine. I'm telling you what I found. Reith looked at Sandhu. Something passed between them. Fast, professional, the visual shorthand of people who'd worked together long enough to communicate in fragments. I need to make calls, Reith said. You need to make them on a line that isn't routed through Portland field office infrastructure, Cole said. Reith looked at him. If there's a source in Portland PD and you don't know who, your field office may have exposure, Cole said. He said it without heat, just as what it was, a tactical observation. Communications planning matters right now. A long moment. Classified file, Reith said, looking at Cole. Not asking. Just saying it, like a man confirming something he'd already decided. Cole said nothing. I'd very much like to know who you are, Reith said. I'm a contractor from Ironwood Ridge, Cole said. Who's trying to help you do your job? Reith held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he turned and walked out the front door with his phone in his hand, and through the window Cole could see him walking to the far end of the parking lot, away from the building, away from the county deputies, away from anything that might be compromised, before he made the call. Mercer came to stand beside Cole. You want to tell me, Mercer said quietly, just between the two of us, what you actually did before you moved here? Cole watched Reith in the parking lot. I was in the Navy. Cole. I was a SEAL, Wade. He said it simply. No weight on it, no performance. 3 tours. 12 years. Then I wasn't anymore. He paused. That's the whole thing. There's nothing dramatic in the telling of it. Mercer was quiet for a moment. Emma knows? He asked. She knows her dad used to be in the military, Cole said. She's 7, that's enough. Does she know what kind? Cole looked at him. She knows I used to have a very important job, and now my most important job is her. He paused. She's satisfied with that. Mercer nodded slowly. He looked out the window at Reith, at the county vehicles, at the slow bleeding of the blizzard into something gentler as the first hint of gray light began at the eastern edge of the sky. The man who grabbed your wrist in the waiting room, Mercer said. 230 pounds easy. Was there any effort in that? Cole was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said, which was partly true. The grab had been automatic, but holding it without escalating. That had required something. Calibration. The discipline not to do what training wanted to do, which was considerably more. I need to ask you something, Mercer said, and I need a straight answer. Go ahead. Is Crane going to come here himself? Cole thought about that, about what Mara had said, about the network, the infrastructure, the 14 months of relay operation 4 miles from this town, about the kind of man who builds systems like that and then watches from a distance while they operate. He didn't come last night, Cole said. He sent people. That's his pattern. He paused. But last night failed. His people are in custody. His relay's been found. His evidence package is in federal hands. He looked at Mercer. At some point, a man who's lost everything he's built and who has nothing left to lose stops being the kind of man who sends people. Mercer understood that. So yes, Cole said. Well, the federal vehicle that arrived at 6:15 a.m. was a large Suburban with medical-grade interior modifications, jump seats in the rear, a mounted IV rack, oxygen ready, the kind of configuration that costs more than Cole's truck and everything in it. 2 agents Cole hadn't met before came with it, both serious, both clearly briefed on the situation. Reith had made his calls from the parking lot, and whatever he'd arranged it correctly. Harlan spent 20 minutes with the receiving physician on the phone, walking through Noah's readings and the warming protocol and the specific concerns she had about a 6-day-old in suboptimal conditions. Cole heard fragments of it from the hallway. Clinical language, precise, Harlan giving it to them straight without hedging. The physician on the other end asked good questions. It sounded like competence meeting competence, which was the best outcome available. Mara came out of the exam room dressed in clothes that Travis had found somewhere. Clinic donation bin, slightly too large but dry and warm. She had Noah bundled in a way that made him look like a very small, very serious package. Ranger walked beside her. At the front door, she stopped. Cole was standing there. She looked at him for a moment. The morning light was just starting to come through the glass panels now. Pale, thin, the specific gray-white of a winter dawn after a storm. It made everything look like a photograph that hadn't been developed all the way. Ranger goes with you? Cole asked. They said it's approved, she said. Medical support animal classification. Reith arranged it. Cole crouched down. He put his hand on the shepherd's head. Really this time, not just contact, actually petting him, running his palm along the dog's ear. Ranger leaned into it slightly, which was a very small thing that Cole noted. Good work, he said quietly to the dog. He stood back up. Will you? Mara started, and then stopped and reorganized. I want to know. When this is over. If it's over. I want Emma to meet him. She looked at Ranger. He'd be good with her. She'd never stop following him around, Cole said. I know. Something in Mara's face. That's a good thing. He wanted to say something about what came next. About the case, the testimony, the federal process, the months of it that she was walking into. He had enough knowledge of how those things worked to know that walking out of the clinic today was not walking out of the hard part. The hard part was longer and quieter and more bureaucratic and more exhausting than one night in a storm. But she knew that. She was a forensic accountant. She'd testified in federal court before. She understood systems, and she understood what it cost to move through them. She didn't need him to explain it. Cole, she said. Yeah. Thank you. She said it directly, without decoration, just the words at their actual weight. He nodded. She went through the door. Ranger went with her, staying at her left heel through the parking lot, through the gray dawn light, to the federal vehicle. One of the agents held the rear door. Mara got in with Noah. Ranger jumped in after her. The door closed. Cole stood at the clinic entrance and watched the Suburban pull out of the lot. He watched it until it reached the main road and turned south and disappeared. Behind him, Mercer said, I've got a deputy who can follow you home. Road conditions are better, but still. I'm fine, Cole said. You've been up all night. I know what that feels like. A pause. I imagine you do, Mercer said. Cole turned from the door. His truck was still in the lot, patient and indifferent, dusted in snow. He needed to call Ruth. He needed to pick up Emma. He needed to eat something and sleep for several hours. And he needed, at some point, to sit in his kitchen and be a person who renovated buildings in a mountain town and had no particular history. He walked to his truck. Reith appeared at the parking lot edge. Mr. Barrett. Cole turned. We may need a statement. Formal. What you observed, what you did. You know where I live, Cole said. I do, Reith said. And for what it's worth, he stopped, something in his face that wasn't his usual temperature. What you did tonight, the cellar decision, the lights going out, the way you managed it. He paused. We arrived to a situation that could have been considerably worse. Cole looked at him. I'm telling you, Reith said simply, because you should hear it. Cole held his gaze for a moment. Then he got in his truck. The engine turned over on the first try. The heater started doing its slow work. He sat for a moment in the gray dawn, his hands on the wheel, the parking lot around him beginning to take on color as the light grew. He thought about Emma, about the duck quilt, about the cereal she'd be eating right now, about the question she'd ask when he picked her up. Not where were you, but what happened, because Emma had always been more interested in the story than the logistics, which was something she'd gotten from her mother. He thought about what he'd say. Nothing, probably. Or something came up. Or some people needed help. She would look at his wrapped forearm and say, Did you get hurt? And he would say, A little. And she would say, Does it hurt? And he would say, Not really. And she would say, with 7-year-old certainty, I'll kiss it. And he would let her. He put the truck in reverse and pulled out of the lot. The road was passable. The storm was done. Somewhere south of him, a federal vehicle was moving toward Portland with a woman and her son and a shepherd who had stood in the middle of a frozen highway because that was the only thing left to do. He drove toward Ruth's house. He was almost there when his phone buzzed on the seat beside him. Unknown number, Portland area code. He let it ring twice, then answered. A voice he didn't recognize, male, unhurried, with the particular evenness of a man who had never once in his life been the one standing in the cold. Mr. Barrett, the voice said, I think it's time we spoke directly, don't you? Cole's hands didn't move on the wheel. The truck kept its speed. His eyes stayed on the road. Victor Crane, he said. A pause. Then, I understand you've had quite a night. And I want you to understand something in return. The voice remained even, cooperative sounding, the voice of a man presenting terms. Whatever Mara has told you, whatever she's given them, it isn't the complete picture. Another pause. There are people above me in this arrangement who have resources and patience that make last night look like an inconvenience. Cole said nothing. I'm not threatening you, Mr. Barrett. I'm informing you. Your daughter's name is Emma. She goes to school at Ridgecrest Elementary. Ruth Calloway watches her when you're unavailable. The voice didn't change register, didn't go cold or dramatic, just informational. I'd like you to consider carefully what your involvement going forward is worth to you. The road was empty ahead of him. Pine trees on both sides, snow-loaded, still. Cole took a breath. Let it out slowly. Victor, he said. Yes. You just made a very serious mistake. A pause. For the first time, something shifted in the voice. Not fear, not yet, but the first small recognition of uncertainty. Did I? You called me, Cole said. That means I have your number. That means the FBI has your number in about 4 minutes. He kept his voice level, the same way he'd kept it all night. Not theatrical, not raised, just the specific flatness of a man who has stopped calculating and started deciding. And you mentioned my daughter, which means whatever consideration I had for how far my involvement goes, you just answered that question for me. Silence on the line. I'd suggest, Cole said, you use whatever time you have left wisely. He hung up. He sat with the silence for a moment. Then he called Reith. The agent picked up on the second ring. He just called me, Cole said, threatening my daughter. I'm sending you the number now. He pulled Ruth Street into view ahead of him. And Reith, we need to talk about what I can actually do to help you find him, not as a witness. He pulled up to Ruth's house. As something else. A pause on the line. Come to Portland, Reith said. Cole looked at Ruth's front window. A small shape appeared in it. Emma, already awake, already at the window, already seeing his truck in the driveway. Even from here, he could see her face change when she recognized it. Give me 2 hours, Cole said. He got out of the truck. Emma was at the front door before he reached the porch steps, still in her pajamas, the duck quilt dragging behind her on the floor because she'd carried it from the pull-out couch and hadn't put it down. Dad, she said, what happened to your arm? He crouched down to her level. Some people needed help, he said. She looked at the bandage, then at his face. She had her mother's eyes, that particular quality of attention that didn't miss things. Did you help them? Yeah, he said. I did. She nodded once, with the gravity of someone confirming something she'd already expected. Then she held up her end of the quilt. Come inside, she said. It's cold. He followed her in. Ruth made him eat before he did anything else. That was Ruth's way. She didn't ask how you were. She didn't make speeches. She put food in front of you, and the food was the speech. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice from a carton, coffee that was genuinely good because Ruth had opinions about coffee that she'd spent 63 years refining. Cole sat at her kitchen table in his jacket because he hadn't quite made it to taking the jacket off, and he ate while Emma sat across from him with the duck quilt around her shoulders, eating cereal and watching him with those eyes that didn't miss things. Ruth moved around the kitchen behind them without speaking. That was also her way. Was there a storm? Emma asked. Big one, Cole said. Did you drive in it? For a while. She considered this while chewing. Were you scared? Cole looked at his daughter, 7 years old, cereal spoon in hand, genuinely curious and completely unafraid of the answer. I thought about the honest version of the answer. The generator going out, the darkness, the weight of the first man's wrist in his grip. The phone call 40 minutes ago with a man who had mentioned her name and her school and her teacher's house like they were coordinates on a map. A little, he said, but I was okay. She nodded, satisfied. Good, she said, and went back to her cereal. Ruth set a second cup of coffee in front of him without being asked and put her hand briefly on his shoulder as she passed. Just a touch. 3 seconds. Enough to say what she wasn't saying. He almost said something to her. Didn't. He ate. The eggs were good. Outside, the storm had finished and left everything white and clean and very quiet. The particular silence of a world that had been through something and was resting on the other side of it. He had 4 hours before the drive to Portland. He spent the first one sleeping on Ruth's couch with the duck quilt over his legs, because Emma had arranged it there with the focused seriousness of someone performing a medical procedure. He didn't argue. He closed his eyes, and he was gone in under 2 minutes, which was another old skill. Sleep when you can, completely and without ceremony, because you don't always know when the next chance comes. He dreamed about nothing. That was also a skill. He called Reith at 9:30 from his own house, after he'd showered and changed and stood in his kitchen for a few minutes, doing nothing in particular, just standing there, looking at the counter, at the coffee maker, at Emma's drawings held to the refrigerator by fruit-shaped magnets. A drawing of a dog, he noticed, that she'd done sometime in the past week. Brown, with large ears, labeled in careful first-grade handwriting, "My dog, future." He looked at that for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he called. Reith answered with, "We traced the number." "And?" "Burner, purchased in Bend, Oregon 6 days ago. Already dead. He ditched it within minutes of the call, based on the last ping location." A pause. "But the ping location is interesting. He was in Klamath Falls when he called you." Cole did the geography in his head. Klamath Falls was approximately 3 hours south of Ironwood Ridge and 4 hours southeast of Portland. It was also, he noted, not particularly close to anything. Not a major hub, not a border crossing, not a transit point that made obvious sense, unless you were moving towards something rather than away from it. "He's not running," Cole said. A beat on Reith's end. "That's our read too. What's in Klamath Falls?" "We're working that. There's a Crane Global Freight affiliate depot outside the city. Small, nominally a relay station for long-haul routes. We didn't have eyes on it because it wasn't flagged in the original case structure." Another pause. And in that pause, Cole could hear the specific texture of a man who was revising his own previous confidence downward. "We may have underestimated the geographic footprint. How soon can you get a warrant for the depot?" "We have one. Filed an hour ago." "But Cole..." Reith stopped. Started again in a way that sounded like a decision being made in real time. "I need you to understand what you'd be walking into if you come to Portland. This isn't unofficial anymore after last night. There are people above me who know your name, and some of them have questions about your background that they'd like answered in a conference room with documentation." "I know," Cole said. "And you're still coming." "I'm still coming." Silence for a moment. Then, "There's a woman named Sandhu who wants to talk to you before anyone else does. Off record first. She's careful, and she's fair, and she won't waste your time." A pause. "She also hasn't slept, and she's on her 3rd coffee, and she'll still be sharper than anyone else in the building, so don't underestimate her." "Wasn't planning to," Cole said. He left Emma with Ruth for the day. Emma, who had taken this news with the equanimity of a child, who trusted that adults came back and had received no evidence to the contrary, and who was already making plans with Ruth involving a puzzle and possibly cookies. Cole hugged her in Ruth's doorway, and she hugged him back hard, both arms, the way she did when she wasn't performing it for an audience. "Tonight?" she said against his shoulder. "Tonight," he said. She let go. Went back inside, already moving toward the cookie conversation. He drove south. The FBI field office in Portland was the kind of building that had been designed to look unremarkable and had achieved it with complete success. Cole found parking 3 blocks away and walked, his breath visible in the cold morning air, the city moving around him with the ordinary indifference of a Tuesday. People with coffee cups. A delivery truck blocking a crosswalk. A woman arguing quietly into her phone. The full texture of a world that had no idea what had happened in a mountain clinic 8 hours ago. He went through security, was met by an agent named Torres who was professionally courteous and didn't try to make small talk, which Cole appreciated. Walked through corridors that smelled like recycled air and old carpet. Was put in a room that was not technically an interrogation room, but had been designed with enough ambiguity that you could use it as one if the situation developed that way. Sandhu came in 4 minutes later. She looked exactly like she had at the clinic. Laptop bag, hair back, the kind of focused energy that doesn't require sleep to sustain itself. She set the laptop on the table and sat across from Cole and looked at him with direct attention. "I'm going to tell you where we are," she said, "and then I'm going to tell you what I need, and then you can decide what you want to do." "Go ahead," Cole said. "Mara's recordings are extraordinary. I've spent 3 hours going through them, and they are better than anything we've developed internally in 19 months of investigation. She recorded Crane describing, in his own voice, the coordination structure between his freight operation and 2 trafficking networks, one regional, one extending into 2 additional states. She opened the laptop but didn't look at it, keeping her eyes on Cole. The financial documentation she collected corroborates 6 transactions we had flagged but couldn't source. The encrypted drive has personnel records, names, roles, compensation records, for 31 individuals connected to the operation, 11 of whom are currently unknown to us. Cole said nothing. Let her continue. We have 3 individuals in custody from last night. All 3 have declined to speak without counsel. One of them, the man you restrained in the waiting room, has a prior federal charge from 2019 that was pleaded down, and his original arresting agent is driving up from San Francisco right now because she knows him and she thinks she can get him talking. Sandhu paused. The Klamath Falls Depot is being executed as of 30 minutes ago. We don't know what they'll find yet. Crane, Cole said, not located. But not running. She looked at him. No, we don't think so. She closed the laptop. Which brings me to what I need. She put her hands flat on the table. I've read your file, the portions I can access, which are not all of them. And I've spent 3 hours watching footage from the clinic's parking lot camera, which is low resolution and positioned badly, but it's enough. She paused. You have a specific skill set that took significant time and resource to develop. You've been not using it in Ironwood Ridge for 2 years. Another pause. I'm not here to recruit you. That's not my lane. But I'm here to ask you directly, what do you know about how a man like Crane thinks when he decides not to run? Cole looked at her for a moment. He thinks he still has leverage, Cole said. That's the only reason you don't run when you should. You've decided that what you can still do outweighs what you're at risk of losing. He thought about the phone call, the way Crane's voice had stayed even until the very end. He called me because he wanted me to pull back. Witnesses? Yes. But also because he's read the situation correctly enough to know that without me, last night looks different. The cellar decision, the lights, the restraint in the waiting room. Those were judgment calls, not protocol. He wants to remove the judgment. Sandhu was listening with complete attention. He's not done with Mara, Cole said. Not because of the evidence. That ship has sailed and he knows it. But because she humiliated him. She was inside his operation for 6 years, and she built a better case than your office did in 19 months. And he knows that. And men like Crane don't file that away gracefully. He paused. He'll try to reach her before trial. Not to harm her. Harm creates martyrs and federal aggravation. He'll try to get to someone around her, someone she trusts. Make her understand that the world he operates in is larger and more patient than a federal timeline. Sandhu was quiet for a moment. Someone like you, she said. He already tried that, Cole said. It didn't land the way he expected. The door opened and Reith came in. He looked like he'd changed shirts but not slept, which put him at about the same position as Cole on the fatigue gradient. He sat down. Klamath Falls came back, he said. Both of them looked at him. Depot was largely cleaned out, recent, within the last 12 hours, but not completely. He set a folder on the table. Cole didn't open it. We found a secondary set of ledgers, different format from the Hartwell Road records. This is operational logistics, not financial. Routes, timing, personnel assignments, he paused. And a notation, handwritten, on the inside back cover of the most recent ledger. He opened the folder himself and turned it toward Cole. The notation was in clean, small handwriting. A set of coordinates, a date 3 days out, and 2 words underneath, final consolidation. Cole looked at the coordinates for 5 seconds. That's Eastern Oregon, he said. High desert. Nothing out there. There's one thing, Sandhu said. She'd already pulled it up on her laptop. She turned the screen toward him. A satellite image, arid land, a cluster of structures, what looked like a converted agricultural compound. Property registered to a holding company we've been unable to source. It appears in none of Crane's known documentation. She paused. We found it in Mara's records. One reference, indirect. A property maintenance payment routed through the Nevada shell. She had found it, and she hadn't told them until she could connect it to something else. Careful and fair, Reith had said. Cole looked at the image. The compound. The coordinates. 3 days. He's consolidating what he can still move, Cole said. The operation's compromised, the ledgers are in your hands, his Portland infrastructure is gone. But an operation like this doesn't keep all its value in records. It keeps value in relationships, in people who know routes, contacts, methods. He looked at Reith. He's calling in whoever's still loyal and whoever's still operational, and he's going to try to walk away with enough to start over somewhere else. Which means he'll be at that compound, Reith said. In 3 days, Cole said. Yes. Reith and Sandhu looked at each other. The same visual shorthand as before, but faster and heavier. We can't move on the compound without more, Reith said. The coordinates and a ledger notation aren't enough for a federal judge. We need Mara, Cole said. Her records plus testimony identifying the property maintenance payment and the Nevada shell. Yes. Reith's voice was even, which means she needs to be briefed, today. And she needs to formally identify and authenticate the reference in her own documentation. Is she secure? Cole asked. She's in a federal safe house in the Portland metro area. Medical cleared Noah this morning. He's doing well. Reith paused. She's been asking about you. Cole looked at the satellite image on Sandhu's screen. The compound in the high desert, 3 days away, a man who had called him from a burner phone and mentioned his daughter's name. He thought about Ironwood Ridge, about Emma and the duck quilt and the drawing on the refrigerator, about the contractor's license he'd gotten in Boise and the quiet he'd been building for 2 years, one renovation job at a time, one school pickup at a time. He thought about the moment in the clinic when he'd moved across the waiting room and the movement had been automatic. Not chosen, just there, the language he couldn't forget. Maybe some things aren't better left behind. Maybe they're just waiting for the right reason. I want to talk to her first, Cole said, before you brief her on the compound. Reith nodded. I'll arrange it. The safe house was an unremarkable 2-story in a residential neighborhood, the kind of neighborhood where dogs were walked at specific hours and everyone knew each other's cars. Cole was driven there by Torres and left at the door, which he appreciated. Mara answered before he knocked a second time. She'd slept. He could tell by the slight softening around her eyes, the way her posture had recalibrated towards something less braced. She was still pale. She was still carrying something in the set of her jaw that would probably be there for a long time. She looked at him standing on the porch. You look terrible, she said. Thank you, Cole said. She stepped back and let him in. The interior was functional, federal safe house furniture, the kind that prioritizes durability over personality. But someone had brought in a baby swing that was set up near the couch, and Noah was in it, asleep, one tiny fist against his cheek. Ranger was on the floor beside the swing in his now characteristic position, close, watchful, at rest, but not deeply so. Cole sat down on the couch. Mara sat in the chair across from him. How's he doing? Cole asked, nodding at Noah. Better than he should be, according to 3 different doctors. Something close to pride in her voice. He's strong. He takes after his grandfather. She paused. My father, not Victor. Good, Cole said. A quiet moment. Ranger's tail moved once, slowly, acknowledging Cole's presence without getting up. They're going to tell me something, Mara said, about the compound. Cole looked at her. I'm a forensic accountant, she said. I've had 12 hours to go through everything in my own head. The Klamath Falls Depot, the notation I made about the maintenance payment, the Nevada shell's geographic footprint. She held his gaze. I know where it points. Then you know what they're going to ask you, Cole said. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. I'm going to do it. I want you to know that before anyone else tells you. I'm going to give them everything they need. She paused. Victor called you. Yes. He mentioned Emma. Yes. Her jaw tightened. Not dramatically. Just a small, sharp movement. I'm sorry. Don't be, Cole said. It was his mistake. I told him that. I know. Reith told me. She looked at Noah in the swing. When this is over, the trial, the testimony, all of it, I don't know what I'll be. I don't know what version of me exists on the other side of this. She said it plainly, not asking for reassurance, just stating it. I had a career and a home and a marriage, and most of those things are gone or compromised or about to be picked apart in a federal courtroom. She exhaled. I'm starting from a number I can't quite calculate yet. You built a case from inside an operation that would have buried most people, Cole said. with a 3-week-old baby and a shepherd and a bag of cash from ATMs. He paused. The number you're starting from is higher than you think. She looked at him for a long moment. Something in her face, not relief, not gratitude, something quieter and more durable than both. Ironwood Ridge, she said. What about it? Is it actually as small as it sounds? Smaller, he said. One grocery store. The clinic you spent the night in doubles as the urgent care. Cell service is intermittent on the north end. He paused. Emma's school has 42 students total, K through 5. That sounds... She stopped. Quiet, he said. I was going to say manageable, she said. But yes, quiet. He didn't say anything to that. Some things didn't need to be moved faster than they wanted to move. Victor Crane was arrested at the Eastern Oregon compound on a Thursday morning, 31 hours before his self-designated consolidation window. It wasn't clean. Cole hadn't expected it to be. The federal team that executed the warrant found 6 individuals at the compound in addition to Crane, 3 with existing federal records, 2 whose identities took 4 days to fully establish, and 1 who turned out to be a logistics coordinator who had been officially listed as missing by his family in Nevada for 11 months. A detail that added a layer of complication to the prosecution that Sandhu spent 2 weeks carefully untangling. The compound itself yielded 17 days of evidence processing, financial records, operational documents, 3 encrypted hard drives, and a cache of burner phones still active enough to provide communication logs going back 14 months. Crane himself said nothing at arrest. He was, by multiple accounts, entirely composed, dressed well, standing in the main structure of his compound in the high desert, as if he'd been expecting exactly this and had simply been waiting to see how long it took. He looked at the lead agent's warrant, looked at the surrounding team, and said, "I'd like my attorney." That was all. Cole wasn't there for the arrest. He had asked not to be, and Reith had understood why without requiring it explained. Cole was in Ironwood Ridge when it happened, doing a kitchen renovation on a property on the east side of town, replacing cabinet fascia, which was tedious work that required sustained attention and produced a visible, satisfying result, which was exactly what he needed that day. Mercer called him at 11:14 a.m. "They got him," Mercer said. Cole set down the fascia panel he was holding. "Anyone hurt?" he asked. "No casualties. 2 individuals fled on foot, both apprehended within the hour." A pause. "Crane's in federal custody. Portland." Another pause. "It's done, Cole." Cole stood in the kitchen of the property he was renovating. It smelled like sawdust and old paint. Through the window he could see the backyard, snow-covered, a bird feeder that the previous occupant had left, and which had been visited, he'd noticed over the past 2 days, by the same pair of small birds every morning with a reliability that seemed to mean something, although he couldn't have said what. "Yeah," Cole said. "Okay. You all right?" "I'm good, Wade." A pause. "Emma know any of this?" "She knows I helped some people. That's enough." "Right." Mercer was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, what you did that night. The town doesn't know the details, but I do." He stopped. "I won't forget it." Cole picked the fascia panel back up. "Thanks for calling," he said. He went back to work. The federal case against Victor Crane and his network took 11 months to fully prosecute. Mara testified twice, once before a grand jury 6 weeks after the arrest, and once at trial, where she was on the stand for 2.5 days. Cole heard about both from Reith, in brief calls that conveyed the essential information without editorializing. The grand jury testimony had been decisive. The trial testimony had been, Reith's word, devastating, in the specific legal sense of evidence that a defense team cannot credibly address because it is too precise, too documented, and delivered by someone who understands exactly how the money moved and can explain it to 12 people who don't. Victor Crane received a federal sentence of 34 years on charges spanning racketeering, conspiracy, and multiple counts related to the trafficking network. 8 of his associates received sentences ranging from 7 to 22 years. The Portland PD contact that Mara's records had flagged, a senior detective named Garrow, who had been routing information to Crane's organization for 3 years, was arrested 4 months into the investigation and ultimately pleaded guilty to charges that ended his career and his freedom for the following 9 years. The network itself, the broader structure that Crane had plugged into, the organization above him that he'd referenced in his phone call to Cole, was not dismantled by a single case. Cole knew that. Reith knew that. Sandhu, who had been promoted and was now running a dedicated task force out of the Portland office, knew that better than anyone. You don't end something that large in a single case. You damage it. You remove a node. You make it harder and more costly, and you take away the people who knew how to run it smoothly. That mattered. Cole had decided that mattered. He thought about the relay shed on Hartwell Road. 14 months of signals bouncing through an abandoned building 4 miles from where his daughter slept. He thought about that, and he let himself be angry about it for the exact right amount of time, and then he used the anger for what it was good for and let the rest of it go. The first Saturday in March. The snow had mostly gone from the lower elevations, and the light had changed, longer now, carrying actual warmth in the afternoons, the specific quality of light that arrives in Idaho in early spring and makes the landscape look like something deciding to be alive again. Cole was in his backyard with Emma when the car pulled up. Emma was throwing a tennis ball for Ranger, who had been living with them for 6 weeks by then, a formal arrangement worked out through Reith's office and Mara's explicit wishes, with the understanding that Ranger was on extended loan until circumstances clarified, which was the kind of language that everyone involved understood to mean something more permanent than it technically said. Ranger was not a natural retriever. He would chase the ball with complete commitment and then stand over it looking at Emma with an expression that clearly communicated, "I have located it. Your move." Emma found this hilarious every single time. Cole heard the car and turned. Mara came through the side gate with Noah on her hip. Noah was almost 3 months old now. His face had arrived at something more specific than it had been, dark eyes that were beginning to focus with real intention, a quality of attention that Cole found he recognized from somewhere. Mara looked different too. Not unharmed, not unmarked. Those would be the wrong words, but less braced. The jaw still had its set, but it was a different set, less defensive, more chosen. She'd found a place in a small town 40 miles south of Ironwood Ridge, legal protection, new documentation, a fresh start that was genuinely fresh rather than just displaced. She was doing consulting work remotely, forensic accounting, private clients, the kind of careful rebuilding of a professional identity that takes time and is done correctly or not at all. She was doing it correctly. Cole had seen her twice since Portland, both times briefly, practical. This was different. Emma looked up from Ranger and the tennis ball and saw Mara and Noah and stopped. Then she looked at Cole. He nodded. She walked across the yard with the directness of a child who has made a decision, which in Emma's case took approximately 0 seconds. "Hi," she said to Mara. "Hi," Mara said. "You must be Emma." "Yes." Emma looked at Noah. "He's small." "He is," Mara agreed. Emma looked at Cole again, then back at Mara. "Dad said you were brave," she said. Mara looked at Cole over Emma's head. Something moved through her expression. "Your dad was brave too," she said. Emma considered this. "He usually is," she said, without particular drama, as though this were simply a fact about weather patterns or geography. Then she turned to Ranger. "This is Ranger," she said, with a pride of ownership that was almost entirely unfounded and completely genuine. "He doesn't bring the ball back, but he always finds it." Ranger, hearing his name, had turned to look at Mara. He crossed the yard in a straight line and pressed his head against her free hand. She bent slightly, holding Noah, and touched the shepherd's ears. Her face did something private and complicated that Cole didn't look at directly. "Good boy," she said quietly. "Good boy." They stayed in the yard for 2 hours. Emma appointed herself Noah's official entertainer, cycling through faces and sounds with scientific dedication, cataloging which ones produced a response. Ranger patrolled the perimeter with the focused idiocy of a dog who has decided the yard contains threats and is committed to that position despite evidence. Cole made coffee and Mara sat at the patio table, and they talked about things that weren't the case, weren't the network, weren't the 11 months of federal process. They talked about the consulting work, about Emma's school, about a hiking trail south of Mara's town that she'd found and wasn't sure she was doing correctly. Normal things, ordinary things. The particular luxury of ordinary things, after everything. At one point, Emma fell asleep in the yard chair with Ranger across her feet and Noah asleep against Mara's chest, and Cole and Mara sat at the table in the afternoon light, and didn't say anything for a while, which was a different kind of thing than all the silences they'd had in the clinic. Those had been silences of emergency, of waiting, of held breath. This was the other kind. The kind you don't get unless you've survived something together. "I keep thinking about that night," Mara said. Not with distress, just thinking out loud. The dog in the road. How close it was. If you'd been 30 seconds faster, you'd have driven past. "I wasn't 30 seconds faster," Cole said. "I know, but..." She looked at Noah sleeping. All these things that almost weren't. Cole looked at his daughter asleep in the yard chair, her head at an angle that would give her a stiff neck, the tennis ball still loosely in one hand. "Yeah," he said. "I think about that too." She looked at him. "Does it scare you?" He thought about it honestly, which he found he could do now in a way that had taken him a while to get to. The honest version instead of the managed version. "It used to," he said. "Now it mostly just makes me pay attention." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That's probably healthier." "Probably," he agreed. The afternoon light moved across the yard slowly. Ranger had given up on perimeter patrol and installed himself between Emma's chair and Mara's, which put him in approximately the geographic center of everyone he was responsible for, which seemed to satisfy him completely. Cole looked at all of them. The dog that had stood in the road because there was nothing else to do. The woman who had built her escape with the meticulous patience of someone who refused to be defeated by the thing that was trying to defeat her. The child sleeping with the tennis ball in her hand. His daughter who had her mother's eyes and a drawing of a future dog on the refrigerator and the complete unshakable confidence that her father came home. None of it was clean. None of it was resolved in the way that resolved actually means. There would be years of legal aftermath, and Mara's rebuilding would have hard days in it, and Cole's particular skill set would not stay neatly in storage just because he wanted it to, and the network that Crane had plugged into still existed in its diminished, damaged form somewhere beyond the reach of a single federal case. But this, the yard, the light, the sleeping child, the shepherd in the center of everything he loved, this was real. This had happened. This was the result of a man stopping his truck on a frozen road because a dog wouldn't move. That mattered too. Cole picked up his coffee cup. It had gone cold. He drank it anyway. Sometimes the most important thing you'll ever do won't announce itself. It will just be a choice, in the dark, to stop. When stopping is harder than driving past and the storm is still going and nobody will ever know if you don't. The ones who stop anyway are the